Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This is The Way. This will be my full Mandalorian Season 3 Episode 1 video. There were a whole bunch of Easter eggs and references, obviously setting up a bunch of big stuff, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, I'll be doing videos for all the episodes, just like I do for all the other seasons. Be sure to subscribe to get them. Careful for spoilers from the episode. If you haven't seen it yet, we'll start at the beginning and work our way through shot by shot, talking about Easter eggs and WTF moments. Starting with the episode title, it was Chapter 17, The Apostate, which is a reference to Mando in his current state. He's not considered a Mandalorian by the Armorer, the Children of the Watch, as Bo-Katan calls their sect of Mandalorians. Even though there was a lot of table setting in this episode, trying to expand the universe and set up a bunch of big characters for conflicts later this season and continue the overarching plot, most of the episode was dedicated to Mando furthering his quest, setting that up to redeem himself by bathing in the living waters beneath the planet Mandalore, so that he would no longer be considered an apostate. They actually started the episode with a very big recap of the previous 2 seasons and the Book of Boba Fett just to set up his quest at the beginning of Season 3. Jon Favreau actually made this funny YouTube reference too, when he said that a lot of people might be picking up The Mandalorian for the first time with Season 3, and there's all this plot that people might have missed if you didn't watch the Book of Boba Fett. Like, how did he get the Darksaber? What was going on with Grogu? Why is Grogu wearing the Beskar chainmail armor shirt? And Jon Favreau said, no, we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to pick up with the plot as if people had watched the Book of Boba Fett, and if they have questions, they can watch recap videos on YouTube. What a coincidence that I make a whole bunch of Mandalorian videos. They haven't quite run into a Marvel problem with the Star Wars Mandalorian universe because there's only a couple spin-off shows, but eventually they'll have the same problem too, where there's like a bunch of different shows that you have to watch in order to keep up on the plot. For example, there was a big Easter egg moment at the beginning of the episode where they referenced the space whales. That's actually setting up a big plot point for the Ahsoka series Ezra Bridger and Grand Admiral Thrawn, which I'll talk about when we get to that part of the episode, because it was a really cool Easter egg, but it was setting up something much bigger later on. They actually opened the episode in a slightly different way too, with the armorer creating something, forging a new piece of armor for a kid that had chosen to become a Mandalorian. The whole ceremony at the beginning is meant to be a metaphor for Din Djarin's journey trying to regain his honor because he took that same creed when he was a little kid. He went through the same process, but then took his helmet off. So now he has to kind of speed run, do some things to regain his honor so that he can be considered part of their group again. They didn't explain which planet she's moved their covert to, but it's different from where they were on that space station during the Book of Boba Fett. You notice in the background of her workshop, there's the giant symbol of the Mandalorians. It's a skull of a mythosaur, the mythical creature that was tamed and killed by the mythical Mandalore that she references during the Creed. This is just meant to be the standard ceremony that they give to all children when they come of a certain age and take the Mandalorian Creed to become part of their people. They put the helmet on and then never take it off except when they're by themselves or when they need to eat, when they are also by themselves. Even though they didn't totally explain this, Mandalorians do take their helmets off to get it on. Like, you have to get Mandalorian children from somewhere. Some of them are born Mandalorian, some of them they find, like Din Djarin. Married couples can take their helmets off in their presence, like they can take their helmet off in their children's presence too, but when they're in public, they always have to wear their helmet. So it's not like they sleep in their helmets. When she recites the creed, she starts talking about the name of the ancestors that shall walk the way of Mandalore. That's the name of their ancestral ruler. Later rulers of their people would also use the name as an honorific, and each leader of their people would be called Mandalore. So like at the end of the episode when Bo-Katan says, fine, you go lead all these people, go find the mercenaries, all these different clans, unite them with the Darksaber, they'll do whatever you say. If he actually did that, like he has a claim to the Beskar throne of Mandalore, he would be called Mandalore. But tens of thousands of years ago, like a long time ago, there was an actual Mandalore who then united their people. He wound up taming a mythosaur, this giant mythical creature, and that's why the symbol of all Mandalorians is this mythosaur skull. They all recite a very big, "This is the way."
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
I'm not sure what kind of giant alligator creature this is. It seems like it's from the lore. If you think you know, write it below in the comments. But they use this big action scene as a sort of mirror to the action scene at the beginning of Season 2 to show you all these different Mandalorians using their weapons, their skills to try and take it down. Like, this is what it looks like when a bunch of Mandalorians work together. The cool thing too is that you see a bunch of different types of Mandalorians too. Like, there are a bunch of Mandalorian females, there are a bunch of Mandalorian children. And just as Paz Vizsla is about to get eaten, Mando swoops in with his Naboo starfighter and Grogu in tow and saves them. Remember, the big deal here is that Paz Vizsla challenged him for the Darksaber. It sounds like now it's water under the bridge, enough time has passed. And the way that Jon Favreau explained it is that Grogu was with Luke Skywalker for about 2 years, so it's been a long while since the end of Season 2 and another small time jump since the Book of Boba Fett. so it's not like he fought Paz Vizsla last week or anything like that. The armor reminds him why he's an apostate. There's a lot of that in this episode with characters reiterating what just happened, like short recaps from all the different characters about what his mission is, what all of them are trying to do right now in the timeline, just because it's been so long since The Mandalorian Season 2. Like, by the way, you're not a Mandalorian anymore because you took your helmet off. Remember, we went through that during the Book of Boba Fett. And he brings her a piece of the planet found by Jawas. Jawa's always a solid source for really important plot items. Anytime you need something really important for the plot, just go buy it from a Jawa. When she says the surface of Mandalore was crystallized by fusion rays, that just means the Empire fired so many weapons on it for so long, it just heated the surface of the planet up till it turned crystalline. We've seen a little bit of that in the trailers, like these crystal-looking caves. That's the surface of Mandalore. His whole conversation with her about redemption is meant to be a metaphor for all their people, like their people as a culture, like all the different clans. None of them agree with each other, but they're all looking for redemption. Them coming together under a single banner and retaking the planet would be the culmination of that redemption, but who knows if that's going to happen in like Season 4, Season 5. But this is him setting up that arc, like the whole concept of redemption for him, for himself, just to become a Mandalorian, but also for the Mandalorian people just in general. So pretty much everyone on the show is looking for a form of redemption, but this is mostly about the Mandalorians. Even Bo-Katan is looking for some kind of redemption because the rest of the people that were following her basically took off because she doesn't have the Darksaber and they don't care about her anymore. The armorer reluctantly agrees to let him try to reclaim his honor, like, okay, fine, go check it out. When he says he'll see her again, that just means that we will see the armorer again this season. Then we see a huge Easter egg scene for something hopefully they'll pay off this season. Hopefully they don't wait all the way to the Ahsoka series to pay this off. Pretty much everybody was pulling a Leonardo DiCaprio meme the minute Grogu looked through hyperspace and he's just marveling at everything like this is so cool, and sees the space whales, the hyperspace whales. They're a race of creatures who exist in hyperspace, like they live in hyperspace and can naturally navigate through hyperspace. They took Ezra Bridger and Grand Admiral Thrawn and his fleet to the unknown regions at the end of Star Wars Rebels. I think, early theory, they're showing them here at the beginning of the season, just a quick Easter egg moment to foreshadow the return of both Ezra Bridger and Grand Admiral Thrawn with his fleet. Because remember, Grand Admiral Thrawn is someone that Ahsoka was looking for during Season 2, and he's meant to be the overarching villain for the big eventual crossover Avengers Infinity War Endgame level event that they're building up to. I don't know if we're supposed to see Grand Admiral Thrawn on screen, like we'll find out who the actor is during this season, or if they'll wait till the Ahsoka series, but I do think that we will definitely see some Grand Admiral Thrawn scenes during the Ahsoka episodes later this year. That's not going to air till like the end of this year though. But for the most part, the events of that series will take place around the same time period that The Mandalorian Season 3 is taking place. We'll probably get some kind of Ahsoka cameo, maybe a Sabine cameo during this Season 2, just to sort of set that up. But the fact that Grogu is seeing the hyperspace whales isn't unique to Grogu. Mando could see them too. They're not like invisible to people who aren't force sensitive or who don't have great Jedi powers or anything like that. Anybody with a pair of eyeballs could see them. And it's not like there's just this one group, the same group from Star Wars Rebels. There's a bunch of them that exist all over the galaxy. The Mando and Grogu head back to Navarro, who Greef Karga has taken over. He's the new High Magistrate of the town and has cleaned the place up, basically Disneyfied it the same way they did with, say, like Times Square in New York City. When he lands in the starport there's an R5 droid in a white C-3PO unit. There's a couple different R5 units that we see, and one later in his Naboo N1 starfighter. So when they keep saying that he needs a droid in IG-11 isn't going to be ready for a while, I think that one of the droids that he eventually winds up using is an R5 unit. I think they just showed a bunch of R5 units in the background here to foreshadow that. This one off to the right is an EV-99 droid, like the one in Jabba's palace, and the one that had become a bartender in the Mos Eisley Cantina in earlier seasons, who was voiced by Mark Hamill in a stealth cameo. That was actually Mark Hamill doing that voice.
Hey, droid. I'm a hunter. I'm looking for some work.
Unfortunately, the bounty guild no longer operates from Tatooine.
One of the funny things about Star Wars is Mark Hamill said that he's done that a lot, like a bunch of stealth cameos that he was uncredited for in the history of Star Wars TV series. He's also done it in some of the movies too, so if you rewatch the movies and the TV series, you might pick up in the background if you listen really carefully. Like that random character sounds an awful lot like Mark Hamill. As they start walking through the streets, Grogu starts going crazy looking at all the different types of food that they pass by. The creatures roasting on the spit seem like womp rats. I think that's meant to be a reference to the salacious crumbs that were roasting in Season 1 on the spit, because like right after this, we see a bunch of them living wild and free in a tree nearby. The chef droid is also a super deep cut. There was one in the Attack of the Clones novelization, and was featured in some of the other novels as well, and there was one during the Book of Boba Fett. Even though we didn't see him in this episode, I do believe that Boba Fett is supposed to show up at some point in some kind of cameo scene. The bat creature isn't meant to be a Minoc. It looks like a Chirodactyl from the Jedi Fallen Order game, which is more like a bat-owl kind of hybrid-looking creature. There's a couple familiar aliens, like there's a Mon Calamari here. The second white C-3PO droid is acting more like a tourism advertisement, which Greef Karga follows up on later, just trying to hype up the local amenities, like, see how nice it is here. The basic idea is that they wanted to turn this into a bigger tourist destination, a bigger trade hub, so the planet is just earning way more money now. He's way, way richer, as he tells Mando. This isn't the Cantina band, but it is another band. This is the statue of IG-11, who sacrificed himself to save Mando and Grogu during Season 1, voiced by Taika Waititi, that they bring back later in the episode for a quick joke. There's a gonk droid behind them, and one later in the episode too. Bunch of gonk droids walking around anytime there's a bunch of droids on screen. When Greef Karga comes out to meet them, he's got another 3PO type of droid serving him and two little attendant droids for keeping his long flowing robes from catching on the ground. I'm not sure what kind of droids these small ones are, but if you think you know, write it below in the comments. When he mentions the Hydian Way, that's a super route through the galaxy, like a major trade route, so being one of the big hubs on that is a huge deal for Navarro, meaning they earn way more money on the trade that passes through the area, and there is a lot more trade passing through the area now. Greef Karga tries to get Mando to move back permanently because he wants a marshal and wants to keep the planet independent, but Mando turns him down because of his quest to become a Mandalorian again. You notice in the background of his office there's a bust of himself, seems kind of vain, which they also use for another joke later to crush IG-11. Because Greef Karga is in such great need of a marshal, that also reminds you of the Marshal Cobb Vanth from Mando Season 2, who has been recovering in Boba Fett's bacta tank for a while now. Maybe they'll wind up paying that off. They teased that Cobb Vanth would come back eventually. That's why he woke up at the end of the Book of Boba Fett, where they had that post-credit scene, like, oh yeah, Cobb Vanth, he's still alive, he'll be back. You notice Grogu is using the Force like a little kid would, just to spin the chair around and grab some space Skittles. He's meant to be way more powerful than when he left Luke. There's been a time jump since he left Luke Skywalker, so he's gotten that much more powerful. And if you didn't notice earlier, zoom in and enhance, he's actually been wearing the Beskar chainmail armor that Mando got him. He wears that pretty much all the time now. He'll probably wear that pretty much all the time in future episodes too. They name-dropped the Pirate King, Gorian Shard. He isn't someone from Star Wars before this that I could detect. I believe they created the character new for the series, just like a new antagonist in this part of space. He's meant to be a higher-level pirate that Greef Karga used to do business with and that this pirate group works for. The way that Greef Karga talks about him, it sounds like they want to set him up as a major antagonist. Like, even though he doesn't get Mando during this episode, they just set up the idea that he's going to be really pissed off at Mando and probably come back for revenge eventually. They have a gunslinger standoff to show you how he hasn't lost his edge, even though he's kind of Disney-fied Navarro. Greef Karga shot first, hand versus Greedo reference. Mando kills the other pirates, setting up the conflict later with the Pirate King. And then they use this moment to explain what happened to Cara Dune after the big dust set that Gina Carano had with Disney, where they fired her, basically. This was actually pretty crazy when it was going down a couple years ago. If you actually remember, they were developing a full-blown spin-off show for Cara Dune's character called the Rangers of the New Republic. Once she got into trouble with Disney and they fired her, they basically canceled that. But here's the thing, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni said that they're not writing the character off the show, they're not killing her off. They explained that she's in another part of the galaxy with the New Republic Special Forces until further notice, quote-unquote, implying that Gina Carano and Disney will eventually make nice and she'll come back to the show. Within the world of TV and movies, if you know a character's never coming back, they use them for some grisly off-screen death. Like, they would have done that if she was never going to come back, so I think that she will eventually come back. They explained what happened to Moff Gideon after the end of Mandalorian Season 2. They took him to a New Republic war tribunal. He will be back again later this season, and he's supposed to get a really cool Mandalorian-inspired Beskar version of his armor. I think he said that there's going to be a big rally for his character this season, but he's tied up with what Grand Admiral Thrawn is doing, which is a much bigger deal that they'll probably tease later this season. But at least right now when Mando is talking to Greef Karga, it sounds like Moff Gideon is still a prisoner of the New Republic. So at some point during the season, someone is going to have to break him out. Greef Karga explains to Mando how he's trying to keep Navarro as independent as possible in the Outer Rim from the New Republic, any other governmental force like the remnants of the old Empire, the Hutts, any of the other major corporate interests in the galaxy. So that's why he doesn't want another New Republic soldier to be his marshal, and why I think they're setting up Cobb Vanth, maybe, to be his marshal. The whole joke about Mando wanting to revive IG-11 is that he needs a droid to help him explore Mandalore, and he used to hate droids like it was a big thing in the first season. IG-11 wound up being one of the only ones that he came to like and trust. They use it mostly for a funny moment, like they bring Taika Waititi back for a really quick blink-and-you'll-miss-it cameo scene who reverts to his former programming, trying to kill Grogu, with them playing hot potato with Grogu. They just throw him around the room like a little football. I'm sure Grogu is used to it at this point, and he probably uses the Force to cushion some of those blows. His protocol droid winds up using his very vain bust to crush him. When they're going to get him fixed, Mando uses a new slang term, or at least the first time I've heard this slang term, scud. The other major slang word that he started using these past couple of seasons in on the Book of Boba Fett is basically like the Star Wars version of the F-bomb. They reveal the expert droidsmiths living in the area are from Babu Frick's race. Now, it's not the same Babu Frick from Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, because that's much later in the timeline. This is just from their race. Their official name is the Anzellans. There's a whole bunch of other droid parts in the background. If you think you spotted some Easter eggs, write them below in the comments. And he vows to find another memory unit so that they can completely revive IG-11 and he'll start working again. We'll see if they pay that off later this season. When they're leaving the planet again, they show another R5 droid, another Gonk droid, I think just to foreshadow that Mando will temporarily eventually use an R5 unit and Grogu will ride in the pod with him. Here's another big foreshadowing moment too. So he teaches Grogu how to navigate in hyperspace. That will probably come in handy later this season and future seasons. It's probably foreshadowing that Grogu will have to travel on his own for some reason. Even though he's so small, it would kind of be hard for him to crawl up and push all the buttons to navigate through hyperspace. Vane and his pirate group attack to retaliate for killing the other pirates. Not sure what kind of fighters they're using. I believe these are from the Clone Wars. Most of the fighters that you see in the series so far are from the prequel era. They have a much bigger dogfight than they've had in previous seasons in the asteroids. Anytime there's a dogfight in asteroids in the Star Wars universe, it just reminds me of Empire Strikes Back with the asteroid field and Attack of the Clones with Obi-Wan and Jango Fett. For the most part, they use this big action scene just to show you how much better their special effects have gotten. Like, it's a much bigger asteroid fight than we've seen in previous seasons. Grogu having the time of his life. They reveal Gorian Shard, the pirate captain, has a much larger cruiser. It's not quite as big as Moff Gideon's cruiser, but it's still pretty big. And I couldn't tell what race he is or find a reference to him in the canon, so he might be a totally new creature that they haven't done before in Star Wars. He reminds me of a version of Swamp Thing from the DC universe mixed with Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean. And like I said earlier, I think they're setting him up as a bigger antagonist for later this season and future seasons. Then they travel to the Mandalorian system where the planet Mandalore is, to the planet Kalevala where Bo-Katan's group of Mandalorians has been living, even though according to Bo-Katan there's not that many of them living with her at the moment. But they just want to let you know that this is very near to the actual planet Mandalore, like he's very near to their homeworld. This Mandalorian castle is designed in the traditional Mandalorian style of architecture, with Bo-Katan's throne looking similar to the throne room on Mandalore. Not quite the same as it was during the Clone Wars and Rebels, but pretty close. Her throne room is much smaller. The throne room that you saw on the actual planet Mandalore is way, way bigger. I'm not sure what kind of protocol droid this is, but I believe it's also from the Clone Wars. The symbol on all of her banners are for Bo-Katan's Night Owls. Then this mural that's sitting right next to her, like back on the wall, is meant to be a huge Easter egg reference to the Mandalorian Civil Wars. It's meant to be a huge metaphor on the show for the way all the different factions of Mandalorians, like Bo-Katan's group, the Armor's group, the other separate group that took off when she didn't have the Darksaber, none of them agree with each other. They're fractured people in need of someone with a Darksaber, maybe someone named Mando and Grogu, to unite them. Because Bo-Katan very literally challenges him with that, like, why don't you go lead them? Take the Darksaber, they'll do anything you say. She explains what happened to her after the end of the Mandalorian Season 2. She says all her former supporters amongst the Mandalorian clans left her after she returned without the Darksaber, and all the Empire ships that she had stolen with them turned to mercenary work in the interim just to earn money. So there's a whole bunch of Mandalorians out there with a whole bunch of capital ships just waiting for someone to unite them. Someone with the Darksaber. But first things first, Mando has to reclaim his honor so that the Armor's people will accept him. So the whole idea here is that Mando is gaining the support of all these different Mandalorian clans slowly. It's just going to take a little while. When she tells him to go to the Civic Center beneath Sundari, that's the main Mandalorian city, the Dome City that we saw during the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. We went there a bunch of times on both shows. It's basically the capital of the Mandalore planet where the main throne room is. So when he goes there in episode 2, it sounds like we might see a live-action version of the throne room. The place where he needs to go in those tunnels is the same area where Ahsoka went at the end of the Clone Wars. We'll get more with Bo-Katan, I think in episode 2, episode 3, because you see footage of them from scenes in the trailers with them standing together in Grogu, so she might also go back to the planet Mandalore with him. She also recaps the brief history of their people before and after the Purge, claiming that his group, the Armorers group, which she calls the Watch, fractured their people, and I think what they're trying to imply here is that Bo-Katan believes that they left the Mandalorians vulnerable to the Empire, and had that not happened, they could have withstood the Purge. Or they could have prevented it from happening in the first place. So the idea here is that Bo-Katan kind of hates the Armorer because she thinks that them turning to the traditional hardcore ways of living and leaving, like being exiled to the moon near Mandalore, fractured their people, weakening them. And on the other side of things, the Armorer, we know, hates Bo-Katan because she views her as a weak leader and a pretender to the throne of Mandalore because she doesn't have the Darksaber. She also tells Mando she doesn't believe in any of the mumbo-jumbo that he's talking about, these living waters beneath Mandalore. It's all just a bunch of hooey, it doesn't mean anything. It's meant to give you vibes of Han Solo during A New Hope when Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker started talking about the Force.
Kid, I've flown from one side of this galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of strange stuff, but I've never seen anything to make me believe there's one all-powerful force controlling everything.
So one of a couple things could wind up happening here. I think he's going to make a believer out of Bo-Katan. He'll find something on the planet that will make her believe, and she'll start to slowly come around to his line of thinking, and obviously the Armorer will start to like him again because he will fulfill his quest to regain his honor. So slowly the idea is that by the time we get to season 4, season 5, however many seasons the show runs, all the different Mandalorians will start to believe in him as a good leader. They don't really get into a lot of what's going on with Grogu during this episode because it's mostly about Mando and his quest, but I think they'll get into that in future episodes. The whole idea that Grogu is also meant to be the next Mandalorian Jedi, or something close to it, because he left Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy, so technically he's not a Jedi, he's pursuing his own path through the Force, kind of like Ahsoka is. Like Ahsoka is a very learned Jedi, but technically she is not a Jedi, she left the Jedi Order. Right now, you just think of her as a very powerful Force user, so that's kind of what's going on with Grogu. But because being a Mandalorian isn't about being born a Mandalorian, it's more about taking the creed, like Din Djarin was not born a Mandalorian. But the whole idea is that the Darksaber is meant to be the sort of nexus between Mandalorian and Jedi culture. That's also Grogu's character as well. Grogu is both a Jedi-oriented character, like he's from that world, but he's also slowly becoming a Mandalorian like Mando. Now everybody's wondering if Grogu is ever going to wield the Darksaber. Wouldn't that be cool? His tiny little hands probably wouldn't be big enough to wrap around the hilt, but he could use the Force to wield it. Maybe Mando can make a tiny Yoda-sized Darksaber. Overall, it was a great episode. It feels like it was a big course correction too, like them going back to basics, so I'm really excited to see where the rest of the season goes. If you spotted any other Easter eggs or references in the episode that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. I'll do an episode 2 trailer video next, and my full episode 2 video will post next week after they release it. Everyone click here for that episode 2 video. I'll update the link as soon as I post it, and click here to learn why Grogu left Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy so fast. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and this is the way.